So I have a cow, a Supergirl, and just a handsome gentleman.
Wearing a good hat.
Yeah. Did good.
Oh, well. Just wouldn't fit on the cow? The horns, it's going to smash the horns, I say, yeah.
Now we have a handsome cow, Supergirl, and I don't know what you are now. Oh, now I see it. Now I see the handsome guy.
Well, technically, now that's not technically a fedora, it's a fodora, but anything in the fedora family should be worn at a slight angle. That's important. A jaunty angle. Not a full angle.
Tell
but
Harrison
just a jaunty
Ford
angle.
that.
Tell Harrison Ford that?
Tiny.
Well, that's a little different. It wasn't right for his character.
And his is pretty much glued in the spot. It will never
running
leave his
and
head.
jumping and the...
But anyway, you don't want to wear it. It's fine. You just give me that time. Perfect. Now it's a gangster style. Isn't that what
Modern
gangsters do? They wear their hat at certain angles?
Yes.
Dead end kids.
Well, that's actually where the jaunty angle came from.
The jaunty.
Oh, is that right?
Because
It's a gangster
1920s
thing?
gangsters had style.
Oh.
They were also murderous bastards, but they had style.
It's important.
Gangsters today have no style. It's true.
Style's
It's
important.
like a
What time is
podcast.
it?
Huh?
It's like we're
It is
podcasting.
5:59. You guys must be sitting on the edge of your seats to talk about geek culture, right?
Yeah.
You've
You
been
have no
waiting
idea
for
what
this
you're here
moment.
for, do you? You just kind of stumbled into this room.
It's been pointed
It's a
out.
place to sit.
that
So you
because-
know why you're here, right? Okay, good, thank you.
So why are you?
Supergirl knows what she's doing.
What has
Follow Supergirl.
has caused you to wander into our domain of discussion?
About geek culture.
So you're like, these people know me.
Wait, I'm gonna make a stretch. I bet they're all geeks.
I'll bet they're geeks.
Yeah, like us. It just occurred to me after 2 days at Comic-Con, maybe we're all geeks here.
Maybe. Maybe.
What do you like about being a geek?
I can like things.
Does that
I
make
get
sense?
you. I get you. That makes total sense. Yeah.
I was listening to a podcast on the way here today, and it was who was the guy's name? Seth Godin. He's a marketing guru,
Okay.
and he was talking about about marketing and how to capture people's attentions. Some stuff that you'd probably be interested in. Actually, it's very geeky talk. But he was talking about how reaching the mass market. You're building average things for average people, and that was the point of the conversation. But then he made a mention. He says, it's not like you're trying to target the geeks or the laggards. So it's like that's kind of an
The
interesting
geeks are the what?
laggards.
Laggards.
Yeah.
Using
So-
that in the same.
No. And the idea you got the average in the middle, and then you got it very much implied to me what he was trying to say. While I thought the definition of geek culture would come up tonight, he was in my mind. He was implying that the geeks are on one end of the spectrum and the laggards are on the
I
other
see,
end of the
okay,
spectrum, right?
So
And
that
everything in the middle is
basically
mass
means
market.
that we're awesome.
Yeah, the leading the pack in a weird way, I guess.
Well, we are, and we're excellent to market to.
Yeah. You want to do introductions?
Let me do introductions. And by the way, hello, Patrick Oldie in the background there.
Yeah, we should introduce us as well as the audience.
Yeah,
But
okay,
this
sorry.
is Patrick. Patrick, what do you do?
He's a buddy of mine. He's
Flipping it up.
fellow
You're a
filmmaker,
buddy?
et cetera,
Okay.
and paranormal
We
specialist.
should introduce these three right here, too. What's your name?
Yeah.
Ashley?
I'm Rocco.
Rocco?
And Connor?
Connor?
Connor. Good. Awesome. Moo. Yes. In English. Hello. I'm Eric Schumacher. I am an actor, a director, and a producer where necessary. Best known for about a year and a half ago, I was Wyatt Earp on a television show for Fox Television called Legends and Lies: The Real West. And actually, this coming Friday at the Loft Film Festival will be the very first public screening of Alex Cox's Tombstone Rashomon, which is another retelling of the OK Corral story. Alex Cox is a fairly well-known director, and I got to play Doc Holliday, so I'm one of the very few actors who's played both roles. And I've also produced a bunch of science fiction, geeky stuff, and a few other strange things here and there, like the crime drama we're working on right now. And in fact, I was in one of our next gentleman's films here.
I'm Marty Khatola. I'm a local filmmaker, screenwriter, producer, actor when necessary. But yeah, I've done a couple of micro-budget films here in town, and I used to host a public access show for 25 years. So.
Hi, my name is Don, and I'm a geek.
Hi, Don.
You bite the heads off chickens?
Yeah, geekiness.
That's heavy metal.
That's old school geek culture.
Yeah,
No, it really isn't.
way back. I've been a gamer all my life. I did a podcast, did lots of hundreds actually of podcasts. Might have hit 1,000.
Wow.
Depending on what you call a podcast, right? So anyway, did that for a long time. And then of course working in media, that worked its way into doing short web series work, and now we've done a few hundred episodes of stuff in video. A lot of it was actually contracted work from Mayfair Games, makers of Settlers of Catan, and involved a lot of puppetry. And then, we've done some science fiction stuff that's going to be coming out here soon. And do a lot of fun things like that.
I would like to embellish what you guys just said. So Marty directed a series and is in the process of directing more geek culture-based films set in a comic book store. The one that I was in is called Writing Frenzy, and we're actually in development and funding, an Indiegogo funding campaign for another film in that series. And Don is, when he talks about a few hundred episodes of something, one of the biggest things that he's done is a show called The Bob and Angus Show, which was a web series developed for Mayfair Games, which is one of the largest game manufacturers in the world. And they did 13 consecutive seasons of the show. I don't think there has been a web series other than that has done 13 consecutive seasons. So that's pretty big stuff, and it's extraordinarily geeky. And also is in development on some geek culture-based stuff.
Yeah, Eric and I are working together on this one, My Stolen Time Machine. Check it out. Teenager steals her father's time machine and breaks reality.
And
meets
by the
other
way,
versions of herself.
Make note, if you go to booth number 1116 anytime this weekend, 1116, and say the words Action Scientist, you get that poster. So
I'm not going to do that right now.
You should go do that right now. You should totally do that.
It might be more entertaining than...
So the subject of this discussion is geek culture in media, geek culture in film. And all three of us have been very deeply involved in that for a long time. And so we asked to do this panel so that we could discuss really the value of making movies about us, the geeks, and how it affects people's perception of us in the world, how it affects the way that we evaluate ourselves and what we learn from it, and how it's done well and how it's not done so well. I guess to get the ball rolling, I'll start by just throwing a couple of questions out there. And if you guys have questions, well, you would have to move, but everyone else, you want soda? I didn't hear the move. Oh, I'm sorry. You
I'm
don't
actually
have a
glad
question
you brought
yet.
that
I
up.
apologize.
Because
So we have a cow in the audience, and I happen to speak cow, so that's how we're communicating here. Anyway, let me start by throwing out. So, do you guys have favorite films that you have not made that are about geek culture?
That I have not
That
made?
you have not made. Like other people's work, things
other
that have
people's
inspired
stuff.
you to make that kind of fiction.
Oh, well, I've always been inspired by, like mostly exploitation movies and B movies to do my stuff, which is funny because my stuff isn't anything like that. I make romantic comedies about people that work at comic book stores. So,
But have you seen any films that are that are about geek culture that you felt were inspiring?
That's interesting. It's usually things that are just geek culture themselves, like the superhero movies and whatnot. You don't really get to see a whole lot of things that are actually about the culture. I mean, there's that Kevin Smith show on AMC, Comic Book Man. That's kind of about the geek culture. But other than that, no, can't really think of any movies or TV shows.
Actually, when you think about Kevin Smith, you've got, not Mallrats. What's the other one that he did?
That was Clerks.
Clerks, yeah. That's very much,
Yeah,
I think,
yeah.
kind of showcases in a way. But
Kind of
anyway.
the beginning of the
Yeah.
of the geek culture movement. He was referencing Star Wars in '94 when nobody cared about it. So.
Right. Yeah. And that wasn't specifically set in a geek culture setting exactly, but it was about people who were talking a lot about geek culture.
The video store back in the day, that used to be one of the
bastions of
the safe place for geek culture, I guess you would say.
So let me ask, what do you guys think right now? 'Cause there's been a lot of controversial things that have happened that have gotten out in the mass media that are directly related to geek culture. There have been things like Gamergate and some of the things about people inappropriately, making innuendos and touching people and so on at conventions and so on. And that's the kind of stuff.
They do that in politics, though, too.
They do. Well, it's more prevalent in politics right now. But I mean, there's been a lot of what the rest of the world have heard about us as a fan of a geek-based culture has been that. It's not necessarily what's prevalent in our own culture, but it's what, as they say in the news media, if it bleeds, it leads. And so the really unpleasant stuff is what people tend to hear about. So
you mean I'm not going to get groped at this convention?
I'm not going to grope.
Man.
I can't make any other guarantees. But I have my personal guarantee, though, that if someone gropes you around me, I will hurt them. So what do you think right now? Some of those controversies have died down a little bit in mass media right now. What do you think right now the general rest of the world's perception of geek culture actually is? What do they think we are?
A bunch of people that live in their parents' basement, but relatively harmless, I would suspect. And and neither one of those is true. We don't live in our parents' basement, and some of us are downright scary. But no, I don't know. I think they kind of look at us as outcasts a little bit, but it seems like each year it's getting a little bit more accepted and a little bit more mainstream, to the point where, some of these cons have gotten so huge just because people want to go, and that's the place to be, like a Coachella or something,
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it's becoming a little bit more accepted. And definitely if you look at what the popular TV shows and movies are, it's obvious that's got to be what people are into now.
Yeah. Thoughts on that, Don?
Well, we're definitely weird. I think if you look around, outside, there is that perception, and I think you're right. I think that's changed. The problem is I live in a bubble, like everybody else on Facebook. Facebook's a bubble, right? It's an echo chamber. The people that I'm surrounded with are intelligent, are accepting, are genuinely good people. Otherwise, they're, I don't let them in my bubble. And for that reason, the downside is that I don't get to hear a lot of what the rest of the world thinks. So things that come up, they shock me and amaze me and surprise me, along with everybody else in the liberal media. There's things that go on that it's like I can't believe this goes on. Anyway, not to go on that topic, but. So I think it's kind of hard to see that, but one thing that's always attracted me to, and I've been going to conventions for a little while, a long time, and Dragon Con used to be my big one.
Oh,
Dragon
wow.
Con, yeah,
In Atlanta?
Yep, I used to live on that side of the states.
Nice.
Dragon Con is, I think, the biggest media convention on that side of the U.S. and huge. Like, I think they pushed 100,000.
Oh, I believe it.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to go to that one because they always have such
it's freaking
amazing stuff going on. Yeah.
And it is a celebration of uniqueness. It's a celebration of diversity. One thing about our culture is we all have our, even though it's in maybe different areas, it may be in film, it may be in gaming, it may be in cosplay, it may be the goth crowd is certainly welcome. And a huge component out there. Even the BDSM crowd, Atlanta is pretty colorful, and that whole convention. And we all get together, and we all have a great time together. And there isn't. I feel safe, right? It's a place in which you can express yourself. That's what surprises me. Now I'm a male, right? And I don't get groped.
Wait, what?
Yeah. And again, and that goes back to living in the bubble. I'm not exposed to that kind of behavior. my gaming groups are 50-50 in gender, and everybody respects each other. I'm not exposed to that kind of thing, so I just have to listen to I'm, in a way, I get this information secondhand. I'm surprised that this is a problem, but it is. So, but anyway, my whole driving point here is that I think that's what appeals to me about the geek culture is while everybody has their unique differences and the things they're passionate about, what brings us together, regardless of what your flavor of geek is that we have that uniqueness about us, and we have that passion, we have that cranial desire, and that urge, and I think that's what we all identify with in each other. So when I think about film, I'm not necessarily I want to talk about geek culture, I want to entertain geek culture, because those are my friends. Those are the people I identify with. And that's the kind of stuff that I like to see and I like to do.
So fundamentally,
and
you're
I'll
saying,
pause. I could go on.
Because that actually takes me to a next question, which is what is it that makes you want to make projects that are specifically about geek culture? And it sounds like a lot of it is because that's your work.
Yeah, and a lot of it's just steal a microphone if you want to say something. Yeah, there we go. We can. That makes it
Off the stand.
Yeah.
Can I
one
drop
thing.
the mic now? I'm sorry.
You got another
that's
half
a
hour.
lot of mics have actually been destroyed doing
That's not a good idea.
that. So, okay, where were we at?
So what is it that made you want to make
Oh, yeah.
media
This is
specifically about about exploring it?
when I think about science fiction, I think about the things I like. I reevaluated that a while ago because I love science fiction. I love fantasy, but then Deadwood. That's neither science fiction or fantasy. What's the common thread? And to me, the common thread is exploration. I want to explore something. That's why the what if theme resonates with me with the Sci-Fi Channel. I want to explore that. That's very much a what if this little thing is true, then this is what the world will. What if we had space travel? What if we had aliens? That's all about what science fiction is. But exploring a lot of different worlds that we don't see, a different way of life, a different way of thinking about things. I think that's why some of these, that gritty Western, Deadwood was so exciting to me, is because it was really exploring what felt like a very real, valid place that had a completely different take on lives.
So then is it that you find people interesting who are interested in exploring those things?
Certainly gives us a common bond and something to talk about. Does that make sense?
Marty, what is it that made you want to make a series of films about people in comic book stores? Why that? Why devote years of your life and nearly kill yourself to make a series of films in that specific
Just kind of happened, We wanted to make stuff, and then, as we were saying earlier, we were inspired by Kevin Smith and Clerks and all that, and we decided, well, if he can make something real quick like that, maybe we can make something real quick like that, even if it's not the greatest thing, at least it's our foot in the door, and that was Comic Book Diaries, the first one. But I don't know, I used to be an avid comic book collector, not so much anymore, because, how many different covers each month and $6-7 an issue. I can't really afford that anymore. But it was still in the back of my head, and so we just wanted to tell stories about you see so many movies that are comic book movies, but you don't really see anything about the people that make the comic book movies. So we kind of went that approach. So I guess it's kind of unique. You haven't really seen that before. I don't know. It just kind of came out of the ether. I don't really have a reason for why.
Well, and I think there have been a few of them out there. The names have escaped me, but there are a stream of geek culture based films, and what I see a lot of the time is that they play a lot on stereotypes.
How do you feel about those stereotypes?
Well, and I think there's on one hand within our geek culture there are. I know a lot of the people who you take a look at the Sheldon thing.
Big Bang.
Big Bang, thank you. So that's one of the biggest geek culture based
Definitely.
shows.
It's one of the
out there right now.
one of the biggest shows on TV too.
I think we just got interference. That was weird. Anyway, so and those guys are all kind of.
There we go.
Okay, it's you. Ha! It's not me. those guys are all kind of big, huge stereotypes. They're your kind of very stereotypical, socially inept nerd types, and those folks do exist within our culture. I think the beauty of our culture is that we're cool with them. Everybody else is cool with them, and that's fine. What we don't see a lot of is seeing folks who are not extreme archetypes within this kind of media. We don't see a lot of people who fit into that demographic of fans who are who are able to conduct themselves in a socially acceptable manner, like most of us in this room, for example. Moo. See, so so I think that's one of the things that's attracted me to making projects about geek culture is, yes, most of the people in my world are a geek of one sort or another, if you want to call it that. But I find that, generally speaking, folks within geek culture are fascinating. We tend to be, if anything else, at least we tend to be quite intelligent. We tend to want to explore things, and we tend to want to talk about broad subjects. We tend to be very creative, and we also tend to be very accepting of all kinds of people and all kinds of things. And that...
you made me realize that I make movies about people that I know,
right?
Pretty much.
Exactly. And so...
And it's an opportunity for us to... that's the thing that I think is fun. That, like, you think about Big Bang, you think about the Bob and Angus show that I did. Those are all opportunities to poke fun at ourselves, because in ourselves as a people, ourselves as a community, because we see our own stereotypes and we can laugh it up. We know that, what makes us unique, what our strengths are, means that, we come together with those strengths. Well, it's not our social prowess that brings us together, right? So we'll get some of those folks that are a little less socially inept, so that are our friends, and we relate to them, but we recognize that. So it's fun to pick on. And any character you put in any series is going to have an element of truth, and that's what makes it funny. And then we exaggerate that to really bring out the humor. So it's poking fun at ourselves. I've heard of people being a little bit offended by the way Sheldon is portrayed, and that's not really accurate. It's like, we're just...
He's just one person.
I do know guys exactly
fun,
like him, though. Right. I know people who are just like that.
I'm a combination of all four of those guys.
Well, there you go. Yeah. So maybe you're one of them. But so it's not to put folks down who have that kind of aura about them at all. It's just to say that geek culture encompasses quite a few kinds of personalities which are typically not represented.
Yeah, it's just recognizing it.
Right. One of the things that we, for example, very rarely see is anybody who is not white in geek culture fiction. On that very show, there's, I think, exactly one major non-white character.
Rajesh.
That's it.
But still, where do you get Rajesh on most shows?
True. I mean, it's something, but I noticed that. I noticed that there's very little representation, and so therefore the perception in the marketplace is that we're all Caucasian.
Well, and demographically we are.
Well,
well, at least the community that comes together.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's the geek. Obviously, you're going to have
actual market research here. It is predominant, but it's not the only voice.
Right.
And also, I think it's important to state that within geek culture, again, there's just a great deal of diversity, and so it would be good to see more of that represented in the fiction about geek culture. Typically, also, in geek culture-based films, everyone is heterosexual. Everyone is, meets a certain archetype that makes the.
Is it male-dominated too? Is it male?
Largely in fiction, yeah, and there's been a big shift in that in the real.
Starting to stretch.
It's interesting.
We got a female Thor now. And...
Yeah. Well, and that's changing in comic books actually very dramatically. And Marvel and DC in particular have been making a concerted effort to shift that, and some very controversial, but probably in largely good ways. What's interesting is I have friends who have been in geek culture a lot longer than I have, the folks in their 60s and so on, and who have told me and I myself have seen this change where there was a point in the history of geek culture where a lot of people were closet geeks. They'd have a science fiction book or a comic book hidden in their desk at work, or, they keep it in their locker at school, and they tried not to let anybody else see it because they knew they'd be teased over it. And that has changed for the most part. And a lot of that is because, and I'll tell you why that has changed. It isn't because of, and here's the opportunity, it isn't because there's been some great shift of a really wonderful accepting perception in humanity that started, grassroots because everyone realized, kumbaya, we're all together in this. No, where it changed was that Hollywood finally got it through their really thick skulls that Supergirl sells a crap load of tickets. That's how it changed. And so suddenly, they're making big movies and just tons and tons and tons of big movies that sell more tickets than any other movie ever made. And now this is a part of popular culture. And when it becomes a part of popular culture, everybody can go, oh, I guess I can take that comic book out of my desk. I guess I won't be teased as much anymore.
Well, and now there's money in it, which means can be more quality put into it. I have definitely observed over the course of my lifetime where science fiction used to be in the B-movie category.
Oh, yeah.
And you had to be really hardcore. That had to be the one thing you wanted and sought out. You couldn't be looking for just a good movie with a good story. Now we have science fiction coupled with good script, and cinematography and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's made a huge impact.
I will point out that I think the very first science fiction or fantasy movie ever to win an Academy Award for something other than special effects or costuming was Lord of the Rings. About damn time. There was a question, sir? Move. Nah, sorry. I wrong dialect. Yeah, go on. Can you restate that in English for everybody else?
I think one of the reasons why geeks aren't really teased as much is that when comic book sci-fi book, people don't really care anymore about them at all. So as goes to school and geeks, nobody seems to acknowledge him at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I'm in high school, there's I'm a senior, through my school experience, that's gone away completely.
And it's just more of an ignoring, or is it?
Yeah. Do you feel invisible or just not called out on your geek?
I used to, but as I've gotten older, I found that a lot of people share the same interests as I do. It's just that they're not as passionate about it as I might be. Like a lot of kids, I got into manga when I was in the third grade because my sister was really into it in high school, so I picked it up. And then at first I was teased for it in middle school, and then as I got to high school, nobody cared. There aren't as many clicks as there used to be. I find you can just find common interest and settle on that.
That's very interesting. When I was in school, I had the polar opposite experience where there were little packs, and you stayed within your pack or you were in trouble. So that's good to hear that there's a little more crossover now.
That started, by the time I was getting out of high school, you could tell in the early 90s that was starting to break down a little bit too. Because I remember when I first started high school in the 80s, it was, you get beat up for listening to the wrong type of music. But now it started to all blend together. And it's nice to hear that it's continued that path.
That was good.
My biggest rally cry in my era was Revenge of the Nerds.
Oh, yeah. Shot in Tucson.
Is that right?
Yeah.
It was shot in
Cool.
Tucson, yes.
Yeah, I didn't live in Tucson then. So
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
So that's interesting. So I want to ask our panel, so what, you both have projects in some level of progress related to, that are specifically about people who we would call geeks, for lack of better words. And if you had an unlimited budget and could make any film point that was about geek culture that you wanted to, is there a central statement that you would make about that film? If you also could make if there's any point that you could make through those characters.
Well, in the next movie that I'm making, it's kind of what we've been discussing up here. Making that point that geek culture is for everyone. It's very inviting, and that it should be a kind of a safe haven to where you're not going to be harassed or whatnot. And I was also thinking, as a little aside, the people that show up at places like this and do the harassing are probably not the target audience. It's probably just people wandering in. I don't think it's so much of the people that weren't accepted now becoming the harassers.
What are you doing here?
Yeah, really.
But yeah, I would like to just convey that central message in my next project.
About just sort of general compassion
Yeah.
for one another and creating a safe zone for everyone. How about you, Don?
I was going to use the word inclusiveness, and I think he just said the same thing. So, I'm very much I want to tell a good story, and I want to portray characters in a very colorful and entertaining light. But yeah, it's, I think those are just positive themes to include anyway, whether it's about geek culture or whatever, it's just, there's lines you want to stay within when trying to portray good people, good characters.
What do you hope the future of geek culture is?
Well, I hope it continues the way it's going. I do like the fact that we're finally getting to see the comic book movies that we'd always dreamed of from 20, 30 years ago. But at the same time, I hope that Hollywood does realize that they can make things other than the superhero movies, because that seems to be all they're doing right now. It's one extreme or the other with them.
Well, when it comes to film, I'm very disappointed in the overabundance of action. You can watch, 15 minutes of a film and 3 words are said. And sometimes, like I think the X-Men had a very recent, I can't remember which one it was, they're muddled together in my brain, but it was pretty exciting because they pulled in a whole plethora of characters. That was it X-Men? No, it wasn't.
Or
X-Men.
was it Civil War?
No.
I didn't see either of those yet. So.
Is that the one?
No,
X-Men
no.
Apocalypse?
And you see, they're all meshing up in my head. But the point is, it's like, oh, now this character, and they all had different fighting abilities. So it actually had an action sequence that was compelling, and I could stick with. But sometimes, oh my God, the Superman movie that. No, the one before that.
Man of Steel?
Man of Steel.
Haven't
Is that
seen
one
that
where they
yet.
they had one where they just
beat
went
each
into the
other up all-
backstory, and
yeah.
here's the planet, and
But
here's
Superman Returns was, ooh.
yeah. But yeah. So anyway, they're really chasing action and some of these different and special effects, and just forgetting to put a good story behind it.
So, like a script.
Yeah, like a script. That'd be a good plot.
Yeah.
Plot.
Movies made by committee, too many cooks.
Well, I think we have to bear in mind that these are huge marketing endeavors, and someone's dropping like $80 million on a film, and they're basing their decision to make that movie on what they think is going to recoup their costs. And the fact is, it's that they do recoup their costs, and then some.
I would also like to see our economy, our collective warriors of independent film, be able to also find a stage. I would like to see something produced other than the big 7, the big whatever the count is now, of the big studios, and some competition, some leveling. And I think it's a good thing about technology is you have a leveling in the playing field, but it often gets intercepted and intertwined and is constantly moving. But I think we still have yet to have. And actually, maybe that is shifting a little bit with Netflix looking for more content and Amazon looking for content. The pipelines are changing drastically. So I think that's moving in a positive direction. And hopefully there's going to be a place where, and they're all clamoring for content. This gets me to no end because it's like, oh, we want to have this and that and the other thing. And I still go on there and I've watched, oh, good, this looks exciting. I'll watch all 13 episodes and I'm done for a while. Waiting for, and meanwhile, they're putting out hundreds of stuff, but not stuff I want to watch, So, and they're appealing to, all these different markets. So in order for us to be interested in a specific genre, you've got to watch a little bit over here, you got to watch a little bit over here.
Okay, so we've just kind of lambasted Hollywood a little bit for making these big,
Lamb-based.
meat
And I just kind of rambled.
up person movies. So, all right, favorite superhero movie? What's one that did it right?
Well, that first Iron Man was pretty perfect. And that really started off all this is how you make one correctly. As before that, they were still trying to figure it out. Mm-hmm. So that's what I would say.
John?
That was fabulous. I also like the second generation of Batmans that came out with, when they darkened him up and didn't have the clown.
With Mr. Gritty voice?
Well, yeah, and the joke, the famous Joker. I'm forgetting his name now.
Heath Ledger.
Yes. But yeah, Iron Man, funny stuff.
They nailed
So that's interesting. That was largely based on. I mean, there was a lot of dialogue in that film compared to a lot of superhero movies. How about the audience? What's your favorite superhero-based film?
Yesterday I watched the premiere of Doctor Strange.
What'd you think?
I liked it. I thought it was made for me. Because my favorite actor of all time is Benedict Cumberbatch.
Is that right?
My favorite Marvel superhero is Doctor Strange.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, there actually was a huge problem with that film. I wanted to play Doctor Strange. They made a mistake.
You would have done.
I said this on an interview I was in recently, and I said, if it hadn't been him, I might have protested that movie. At least it was him. Okay, that's all right this time, buddy. But you get one. Sorry. No. Anyway, seriously.
But what I really liked is I thought that it would be cheesy to add this one cape. I thought that they would miss that, and that's one of my favorite parts about Doctor Strange. But they actually did.
Good. I'm pretty much right there with you with Doctor Strange, by the way. I actually wrote a letter to Stan Lee about 5 years ago saying, listen, you don't know who I am. You will. I need this role. No response, of course. So, how about you guys? Any other?
For me, I think what got me into geek culture, I liked the 2003 Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire.
Yeah, with you.
I wasn't an athletic kid. My dad really wanted me to be in sports, and I couldn't because I got the coordination of a piece of toast. So,
I've never combated a piece of toast.
Rye or
It's the
pumpernickel?
hit points on a piece of toast.
It's a good choice. Anyway, yeah.
But yeah, that was the first live action film I remember seeing, and it did something for me where I started getting more into comics because of that movie.
That's a good choice.
Excellent director.
Yeah.
3 runs of the Batman animated series, and that's kind of how I.
Good. And you? Any particular favorite superhero movies? Not at all. Do you like superhero movies? Okay, good. If it's hard to pick one, is that the problem? Yeah, okay. I can. How about you back there?
I'd probably have to go probably the first Transformers. I know it's not really superhero, but I really thought that really changed a lot. Like she said, this first Spider-Man series was awesome. I think as it's growing and growing, I think the darker side of the comics, like Deadpool, I really enjoyed that.
Well done.
Yeah, I did really.
Oh.
You forgot to say Deadpool, didn't you?
No, not Deadpool. I've got Sandman.
I don't think they made technically a Sandman
No,
film.
what do you
You're
mean?
talking about
No,
Spider-Man film.
No, sorry. What's
Or-
darn it? Wait, Watchmen. Thank you.
Watchmen.
Yes.
Very good stuff.
See, I love that. I
like
think
it.
they did a great job. I mean, it was just like I felt like I was just reading the book all over again.
I guess people weren't ready for that or something. Yeah.
Oh, did it not do well?
Yeah, they
It
put
didn't
it
do
out
very
like
well.
February
Oh,
or
it's
March,
fantastic,
and
though.
the audiences were just kind of like,
And-
what? But
Yeah,
I
and that
liked
might
it.
be just because it was one of those. You know, what I mean, I really like.
Well, it was like 20 years after the comic book was launched too, so it was a little hard for it to find its mainstream audience, I think. But the hardcore, geeks who read it, I mean, I enjoyed it quite a lot.
It's still the fact that movie got made, and like you're saying with the Doctor Strange, they put the cape in there, and before that would have been something they would have completely skipped over. But now they're realizing, you put these elements in because that's what people are looking for, and you really can put it in a movie. Whereas before they would have been like, nah, that'll be the first thing cut out of the script.
It's true. There's been, I think there's been a stronger effort to try to actually make films that are actually for the actual fans of the original media, whereas before I think they would cut things out because they were afraid that it wouldn't play to the general audience, and they forget that the reason that all these movies are being made is not only because they do play well to a mainstream audience, but because, let's face it, we as geeks, we spend money. We spend a lot of money. I mean, you're wearing a Supergirl shirt. Upset,
So, I want to go back and answer that question about the future. Here's something else I would...
In the year 2000... Oh, wait, I'm a little late. Go on.
Here's something like, Dear Hollywood, please listen to my plea. If you're going to spend so much freaking money, hire some advisors, science advisor, technical advisor, whatever it is. Just tighten up the science a little bit. You're writing stories for some pretty freaking smart people. Your audience is made up of software engineers that know a thing or two about computers. And, I'm not saying take some liberties and put together some strange GUIs that you would, interfaces that you would never actually see in practical, because you need that for film. I get that. But, make sure you're getting the lingo right. Matter of fact, this was this very simple one. I was watching Bones. Love Bones. The science on that is just outrageously crazy. Right down to, what's the character's name that, King of the Lab. You guys don't watch Bones?
Hudgens?
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was going to make beer for that evening's dinner. You don't make beer in 24 hours. You know what I mean? It's a simple thing. It's a process that takes a couple of weeks at a minimum for a lighter beer.
They didn't do the research.
Yeah, exactly. And some of that's going to get through. Like, how do you know everything? But there's some times where it's just like, man, you should at least hire somebody to look into these little things.
I should say that Don is a beer geek and actually brews his own beer, and we actually are in the process of...
it's one of my flavors of Geek.
So we've actually developed a show about making geeky beers, so this is like a particular issue for him.
Yeah.
Not everybody.
Like you're saying, you watch old Star Treks, and it's like, oh, geez, that's not correct. But they can't go back and change the old episodes, But that does make it.
And that was
funny
much
sometimes.
lower budget. That was the science was, you know what I mean?
Can't predict the future completely.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I think what's most
You can't.
important, though, is just being consistent with the reality that you create. So if you've created a mythology and a science, even if it doesn't actually make sense in the real world, as long as you're consistent with your line of logic, it makes sense.
Like I know Big Bang Theory actually does have technical advisors, so they get all their science jokes right and everything.
Yeah.
So people would just be like, no.
Yeah.
I think the first Fantastic Four movie had a couple of really major issues where they completely skipped their own logic. Yes, move.
Okay, give me a straight, honest answer. Kirk or Picard?
Ooh.
I have my answer. You go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to say Kirk.
Janeway. No. Kirk or Picard? You said Kirk?
You said Kirk?
There's no wrong answer.
There's no wrong answer.
I'm going to go with...
Except the one that isn't mine. Yes.
I'm going with Picard.
They're both awesome.
He's going with Picard. All right. What's the wrong answer?
Kirk.
Sorry, Kirk. Kirk for the win.
The wrong answer was
I want to make sure there was...
McDowell.
What's that?
Well, since
The
you
wrong
asked the
answer is
question, what's
Malcolm
yours?
McDowell.
Yeah.
Because
Kirk.
in generations with both of them.
Terrible. Okay, let's ask the rest of the audience. So, what, Kirk or Picard? Kirk. Back there? Picard. Okay, so, all right. Well, now that we've started this conversation, I guess we have to finish. First of all, why not Kirk? Why not Kirk? I don't understand why you don't like Kirk.
I think Picard's a better leader. I think Kirk is cooler, like, hands down, but Picard's more...
A better leader. Why do you say a better leader?
He's calmer in situations.
Calmer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Kirk's original.
Kirk's original. Okay.
Yeah. Then goes Kirk, then Picard.
Nobody for number
I'm
one.
going to give you some geek cred here, okay? I was literally today, before I came to the con, I was reading a Star Trek novel written by William Shatner, and it's a crossover novel where Kirk and Picard are in the same thing. You know what I'm talking about? And he tells Spock that Picard is a great member of Starfleet, but he just plays too much by the book. That is why I like him. Yes. Because exactly that. He's a visceral, go get it done kind of guy, and I appreciate that. And frankly, as an independent filmmaker, one must be a little bit of both. One has to be a little bit by the book. You have to really plan things out very carefully. But at the end of the day, you just go get it done. And so I've learned a lot from both captains, but the level of daring do that Kirk had is inspirational to me. So I hope that slightly validates Kirk in your eyes a little bit. She's glaring at me. I'm frightened for my life now.
I think it's just kind of the era that you're born in. Like I was before, and that's when they started to do Star Trek movies.
So does that make you more of a fan of the Star Wars prequels than the originals?
Oh, I think the prequels way better.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But what got me?
Real
You and pretty much no one else on Earth, but sorry, I'm kidding. No, it's not true actually. I'm teasing you. No, actually, there's a lot of good stuff in them. You were saying, I'm sorry.
What got me into it was the newer one, because that's what I saw first.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then kind of my big sister, she was born in the Picard era. She likes Picard, and my dad likes.
It's kind of like your introduction to the mythology. Yeah, that's kind of where you found your safety zone in the mythology, and then everyone else is an add-on, kind of. Yeah, I know what you're saying. I totally get you. And actually, my nephew is a gigantic fan of the prequels, and we have that argument occasionally. And I have to admit that also as a martial artist, the prequels, there's some stuff there. You know, I mean, Ray Park is Darth Maul. He was the one who played Darth Maul, and he had the red face. In the original Star Wars movies, yep.
I'm being stupid. The prequels, I was a bit brain dead because I was up since like 5 o'clock in the morning. But
well, you are also trying to translate from PAL into English, so you got to give you that. Sorry.
I got the sequel.
Oh, so you actually prefer like A New Hope? Okay. Well, good. That's no good for you. I mean, because Darth Vader. So. No, but I think so. That's an ongoing geek community argument about the Star Wars prequels versus the pre-sequels or whatever the hell they're called.
And the new as well.
So okay.
I think they did a bang-up job on the new one.
I liked it.
I liked it a lot.
So
how do you feel about the very newest Star Wars?
The very latest Star Wars,
newest
Rogue
Star Wars.
One.
Well, I haven't
Episode
seen
7.
Rogue One, but the
one that
one
isn't
with
out yet,
Kylo Ren.
No.
The Force Awakens.
Kylo Ren.
Yeah. What do they call it?
Force Awakens.
Force Awakens.
Okay.
The one that comes out in December
No,
is
the
Rogue
one
One.
that comes.
Disney did a way better. They did way better with the Force Awakens one than the first 3 that Disney made. They didn't make the.
No.
Yeah, they did. They made the prequels.
That was actually that was before
Lucas.
they sold. That was before Lucas sold. That sadly was actually George Lucas making those.
But we still get what you're trying to say.
But we get the idea. Yeah. So anyway.
Arguing semantics. I think there's some moments, but
I like the only reason why I watch them is just to see where 4, 5, and 6, technically 1, 2, and 3, kind of originated.
That was my interest too. Yeah.
Force Awakens, I thought that was fresh.
I agree, except I do want to say one thing. I did have one problem with The Force Awakens, which is I could take out Kylo Ren without even raising a sweat. I mean, what a wimp. Whereas Darth Vader was like, oh, crap. Yeah, no, it's like, I mean, seriously, the guy's a wimp.
But you didn't have 20-minute Senate sequences, which is what the kids
Also
are clamoring
true.
for.
No, but I mean, as somebody who also, I was madly in love with the
25-minute
original Star Wars.
races. Did you see the
That was
clip
sad. That was sad.
They had an extended version of that pod race.
Oh, jeez.
That was
awful.
They really did
Only because it
properly
lasted
pay
too long.
homage, and they even had what's his name, Kenny Baker was credited as R2D2 consultant. At least they gave him a nod, right?
I think they put him in the suit maybe one time for episode 7.
They might very well have, yeah. And I know that Peter Mayhew, who was the original Chewbacca, was actually in that costume.
Yeah.
For most of it.
Now, I do want to make a point here, which is interesting. So we've evolved actually, into a discussion of what we do as geeks when we get together, which is arguing about, New Hope versus prequels and all this other stuff. And if we pointed a camera set right about there at us, we would have a geek culture movie right now. Because that's actually part of the joy of making geek culture films, is that you can actually kind of take those arguments and put them into some kind of a media, and then an audience that is part of geek culture watches and goes, I've had that conversation so many times, and an audience that is not geek culture, well, they'll either nod their heads in shame and walk out of the theater, or they'll kind of get into it and realize that these are the things they wish they could have discussed if they only had geeky friends like us, right? So that is actually, I mean, I've actually signed on to movies before simply because in the midst of a film that had nothing to do with geek culture, they had an argument about like superheroes. And I went, okay, good script, I'll take it. Let's do it. You know?
I found, and again, this is extending a little bit from my, it's not just what if, but let me explore something. But I found that I not only like Joss Whedon, but I like everything his actors do after Joss Whedon, right? And that's I mentioned Bones, and a lot of things, I follow them, and that's how I love the cast of characters.
Castle.
Yeah, big fan of Castle, I just like the characters that he puts together and things like that. That's a little bit of a
Okay, so here's a question for our audience. What actor or actors would you like to see in a film about geek culture? Moo?
Benedict?
Well, yeah, I knew you were going to say that.
He's not only portrayed as smart, like the intelligent, but he actually is pretty intelligent, and I kind of see that.
I'll tell you what little I know about him is he's definitely a theater geek, because that was what he was before he got Sherlock. Most are, but you'd be surprised. There are some who get into it for very different reasons. But specifically, there are a lot of actors who start out in film, and then there are other actors who start out in theater, and they're an interesting subset. There are some very big differences in the way that they tend to approach the art, and if that's your starting point. And Cumberbatch was in the London theater, and when he got the role as Sherlock, and that's his training. That's part of why he has that. It's interesting. You'll kind of notice. I'm getting way off subject, but you'll notice that a lot of actors who kind of tend to do those really powerful roles, like he does, they came out of the theater. Because they know how to hold an audience in the grip of their hands, who's alive and in front of you,
got to
ready
project
to throw
to that
off
back
food,
row.
And as an aside, I came out of the theater, so watch my stuff.
You just had to geek out there.
Yeah, I had
for
to
a
geek
second.
out a little bit, but no. So I think you're right. I think he'd be great in a geek culture film. Anybody else?
I can't believe to see how, I guess different actors react to fan base themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You have something like the actors like Star Trek, like the original series, like they had no idea that this was going to blow up the way that it did.
Right. Yeah.
To see kind of that kind of take where.
There was a really interesting thing in quite a few years ago. There was a TV guide when they were still doing TV guides. That was like an anniversary issue for Star Trek, and they interviewed all the people who played the captain of something in Star Trek up to that point. And one particular actor, who shall remain nameless for the moment, who was on one of those series, basically said, "You people are all crazy. I didn't want to do this. My wife made me do it. Screw you." Wasn't any more Star Trek. Not invited to a lot of conventions, but the smart ones, like your Shatners and your Picogs and all that, have really embraced the culture, and of course have had massive, amazing careers because of it. But it is a very interesting thing to see how fans can get kind of gaga over a particular actor, and it's a very weird relationship sometimes. Anybody else favorite actor who you'd like to see in a geek culture series? No? You guys, who would you cast? I mean, other than me, obviously, if you were putting somebody in a geek culture film.
Oh man, it's such a gigantic choice.
Okay, I had to pick one.
If I had to pick one,
Agent staring at you. Look, here's my book.
Wow. I don't
3,
have
2,
I don't have
1.
my elevator pitch ready. I need to get it ready.
Well, I'll put him in the film, whoever it is. You just gotta say it.
Whoever it is. Let's throw Harrison Ford in.
Harrison
That's
Ford,
box
okay.
office gold. Right?
Very good, box office gold.
Renee O'Connor, because I have a childhood crush on her.
Renee O'Connor. So that was
Gabrielle.
Gabrielle from
Yeah.
the original Xena Warrior Princess.
Still hasn't shown up on Ash vs. Evil Dead, but I suspect.
Yeah, and I would like to add to that question. I would like to see more people in science fiction that are willing to go to the conventions and talk to people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's, I constantly think of there's some sort of magic line between what's science fiction and what's just an action movie, right? What's serious science fiction that I can geek out about, and what's just I think like Arnold Schwarzenegger years ago they were great movies about Mars, but somehow I don't feel as connected. And they remade it.
Total Recall?
Total Recall, right?
How funny you can't remember the name of Total Recall.
Yeah, that's funny. That's a good point. But I mean, it was a great movie, and I really enjoyed it. But somehow that
What were we
connection
talking
wasn't quite as there because it was way off in this big Hollywood land.
Mm-hmm.
But what I do admire and I do appreciate is, again, back to that community thing, the people that are coming to the conventions and visiting with the fans that are connecting, even if they have to be up on a stage because they have so many freaking screaming fans they don't know what to do with, but at least, making an appearance to connect with the people and being a part of the community as opposed to just doing their job and going home.
Mm-hmm.
That's something I would like to, at least in the genre of science fiction and fantasy, see more people that are going to be engaged with the community beyond just the film.
I agree with that, certainly. That's actually become big business, too. They say, actually, in between Star Wars movies, Anthony Daniels, who played C-3PO, made an incredible living just going to cons. And
he was a phenomenal guest. Like in the convention, I used to always like to say they give good guests, meaning that they can really, have a lineup of panels that they can entertain a crowd.
Yeah.
And I like good people. I have seen a lot of people. Go back to Dragon Con, and Ted Raimi, met him, and I enjoyed him on again.
Mm-hmm.
This is dating me, right? I enjoyed who's Joxer on Xena Warrior Princess, and he when I met him in person and got a chance to see him, entertain us live in a room this big with way more people in it. But it's like I became not just a fan of his art, but a fan of the man.
Mm-hmm.
And now I pay attention. I want to see more stuff that he does. And I don't remember where I was going.
I think you got the point out.
I think overall,
I'm glad you're keeping track of
Yeah.
that because I like it.
I think that the
people to
great
interact.
majority of those of us who actually perform in film and television and so on, and this isn't always the case. There's always those outlier, people who aren't entirely clear on why they have a career. But the great majority of us, I was in the hallway just a little bit ago and somebody recognized me. And
Can you keep
said,
the
"Oh gosh, I'm
chainsaw
so
to a
sorry, I missed your
minimum?"
panel on the fan and all this." We appreciate the heck out of that. And,
That reminds me, I owe that guy $10.
Oh, thanks. No, every so often I get recognized from something I've done, which is rare for me because I'm a character actor and I tend to, if somebody doesn't recognize me and saw me in something, it's actually like a compliment. But, it really is truly an honor when somebody actually recognizes your work and just plain out appreciates it. The bigger you are as a celebrity, you also can get a fairly sizable paycheck for showing up at conventions. But I think that ultimately the reason that people keep inviting you back is because you actually do care to engage with your audience and you appreciate it. And it's a shame when that doesn't happen. Anyway, we are just about out of time. Any last questions? Yes, sir.
I want to go back to fantasy. Why I like it, why we like it.
Can you speak a little louder so they're bleeding over here?
It's I've been growing up with fantasy for a long time. Skyrim, and I know Borderlands isn't really a fantasy, but I've loved that forever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the reason we like it is because of exploring new worlds and things that we aren't able to do right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That kind of brings to mind, are any of you familiar with the author Robert Heinlein? You might have heard of him somewhat recently because Caspar Van Dien is here, and Robert Heinlein wrote the novel Starship Troopers, which became a film, and a lot of other really big. He wrote in like the 1940s and 50s and 60s. Died some time ago, but I mean his work was really groundbreaking, and he coined the phrase speculative fiction. And it's a really good phrase for the stuff we like, because basically what that means is he was saying it's not just science fiction, it's speculating about what the future could be, speculating about what humanity could achieve.
Remember when we speculated about that thing?
And so Marty
now that's ancient
is the only person left on planet Earth with a flip phone. And but they this is
that was
this
speculative fiction at one time.
Star Trek communicators really. So I think that's a really good way of stating what most of us really appreciate about all this is it's that hope that maybe someday we could do this, or that imagining. I'll tell you something. I studied martial arts for a long time. My Kung Fu grandmaster used to say, "Have wings of mind," and I think that says it all. We as fans really love the idea of having wings of mind, of imagining what could be and what we could do.
And fantasy has a lot of the same benefits that science fiction does, and that it's it's far enough apart from reality that our day-to-day lives that we can tackle issues that we couldn't tackle quite up front. Going back to science fiction, you think of Lieutenant Uhura being, a black female officer on board. That was groundbreaking
In that area,
And fantasy has that same advantage where we can talk about, how even the littlest people can make a difference, or we can talk about race wars and how, why, racial things are what our challenges are around that. And we can do it directly. We can be like, in your face and almost take quotes out of our own society, replace a couple of words with the races in this world, say the same damn thing.
It's elves and dwarves versus,
right.
pick a color.
It's black on one side and white on the other, as opposed to white on one side and black on the other.
Yeah. Star Trek episode.
Throwing that reference out there.
Original Star Trek.
Yeah.
So, any last closing statements while we close this thing up? Yes. Move.
I think that says it all.
It's a good way to close.
Absolutely profound. Move.
And I didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
That was a twist.
Cows are smart. I don't eat beef, and I'll tell you why. It's interesting. I was hanging out. I was playing a superhero on a movie set, and we were shooting it on a ranch. And while I was taking breaks to run lines and so on, a couple of cows from the ranch came over and hung out with me, and I got to really like these cows. And I went, I can't eat you guys anymore. That was pretty much. I know it sounds crazy, but that is literally why I don't eat beef right now.
Such a softie.
I raised cows, and our plan was that we have a boy and a girl, and we were planning to once they grow up that we slaughter the boy and use them for meat. But I don't think my mom and me bring ourselves to slaughter anything.
Cows are people too. Cow lives matter.
Did you name your cows?
Yeah, T-bone and butter.
You see, when you name, T-bone, though, that's not a really good name for something you want to keep alive. Very good. We're just about done. So, and he's giving us more time than I thought we had, but nonetheless. How do we find us, in case anybody is interested in following our stuff?
Well, I'm doing a crowdfunder right now to try to raise money for the next movie, and I'll hand you guys some cards for that. Anybody listening on the podcast, you can tweet me at GMR Podcast.
GMR Podcast. And there's a website too, right? For you?
It's probably just better just to go through the Twitter, because the website, that needs some updating.
Needs some work? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. Facebook at Sealy Studios, Seelie, like are you familiar with the Sealy Court? They are the Fae, the good aligned Fae of English and Scottish folklore.
For our fantasy fans in the audience.
Yep, exactly. Sealy Studios also has Twitter. Otherwise, I'm Don Dehm, Dehm at Twitter. And I'm on Facebook too.
Very good. If you can only spell my name, which is a little bit challenging for anyone who's not German, Eric Schumacher. I'm all over social media, and of course you can find me through sealystudios.com as well. And just as a reminder, again, if you go down to booth 1116 and say the words "Action Scientist," this is today and tomorrow. You can get a poster from My Stolen Time Machine, which we did actually a previous screening of just about 2 hours ago here. And that will launch sometime next year, and it's a great. We think it's a great series. And then of course, Tombstone Rashomon is releasing very first public screening on Friday the 11th at the Law Film Festival. So if you happen to be in town or in the area, it's good. It's a pretty damn good film, I think. And so anyway, thank you guys so much for coming and listening to us blather on, and for joining us in conversation. And we look forward to seeing you guys again. Moo. 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 Let's all say that together, shall we? 1, 2, 3. Moo. Someday, maybe we'll have you'll have to come. We'll have an entire panel where all we say is moo.